All right, we're back. I think we're recording now. And we are Game 3001, Artificial Intelligence, in the summer 2019 semester at George Brown. Week 2, part 2, we had a bit of a kerfuffle with some code we had to fix up, and we're back. And we're going to continue with that stuff. So again, we left off, we had this stuff where we commented out certain parts of it just to make sure that we can do this and have a very simple blank screen. That's what you should be at, right? So again, the blank screen we're going to use because we're going to put a target somewhere on the screen this week. We're going to make the target, and then next week we're going to steer to it. Today, your challenge is going to be move something to the target and make it stop. Very simple. But for now, let's just make the target first. So again, a recap of what we did last week. This is just another view of making another game object. I'm just going to close these off. So I need a new game object. That's what I need, right? The new game object is going to be just a circle that I'm going to use as a target. We might have more than one eventually, right? For now, we're going to have one target. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to eventually steer towards that target. Today, I'm just going to move towards that target. Different than steering. No steering, all right? So first, we need the target. That's what we're going to do this week. We're just going to create it. So I'm going to go here. And what I want to do is I want to create a new class called target. All right, so let's do that together. So I'm going to go over it slowly with you guys, kind of what we did last time. So this time I'm going to right-click on my header file. The header file is filter. I'm going to click add. I'm going to go new item. And this time I'm going to pick header file. Notice it's going into the wrong spot. Right here, you can tell it's going in the wrong spot. And so I'm going to browse to where it should be going. It should be going up one into my SRC folder, and this is where it's going to go. Okay? So I'm going to click select. So now it's pointing at the right spot, right? Because if it's not pointing to the right spot, if it's not pointing to the SRC folder, it's going to go somewhere wrong. I do want a header.h, and I'm going to call the header.h file target. I'm going to go target.h, there it is, and click add. It's going to add a blank file pretty much to my header files filter under target.h. Okay, let's add to the source file. So again, I'm just going to minimize that, go to my source file, right click, add, new item. I'm going to click CPP this time instead of header, and I'm going to make sure that it goes in the right spot. So you can see that it's going to the SRC file folder, right? It's going to be a CPP file. It's going to have the same name, so target. .cpp, press enter, and it should create a target.cpp there. However, I don't trust it. I want to make sure that it's in the right spot. So I'm going to go to my template, right click, and I'm going to go open folder in File Explorer to see where this stuff is. And you can see that now I'm in this template, and that's not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be up one into the SRC folder, and I should see these two files, target.cpp and target.h in there. If you don't, and if you see them in the other folder somehow, you need to remove them from the filters and then move them from wherever they are into this folder, the SRC folder, and then add existing item to the filters just like I showed you last week. Okay? So now that I know this is working and this is fine, we're in the right folders, I can access everything. So again, the first thing I want to do is in my target.h, you can see that that's there. My target CPP should point to my target.h, so we should link them together. So I'm just going to include that here. So I'm going to say include, right? And then target.h. That's the first thing I should put in my target.cpp. Yep. Next, in my target.h, I have a pattern that I've been using to have a preprocessor command check to see if my class has been defined, and I can do that by checking what it looks like in another file, like island.h. Island.h uses this structure, so I'm going to take these two lines, copy them, go to my target.h, and paste them. Except they're not islands, it's a target, my target, where I'm going to be kind of targeting. There we go. And I want to end if, but to get an example of what it looks like to end if, it's on the bottom, you can see that the end if part right there is what I want. And anything between these two preprocessor commands is going to be executed if the target is defined, or it needs to be defined. So I need this part. Are you with me? Pretty simple. Again, if not defined target says, hey, if the target directive or preprocessor, I guess area, if you will, or object, the target object hasn't been defined, then define it, and then do some work in here, and whatever is in here is okay. If it has been defined, skip this, and don't do this at all. And so that way it doesn't include the same definition twice. That's what it doesn't do. All right, cool. So we have our target.h and we have our target.cpp. Target.cpp just points to the h file. And now what we want to do is we want to create our class. So I'm going to say class. We're going to call it target. It's going to inherit from GameObject. Oh, wait a minute. I can't get GameObject. What do I have to do? How come GameObject doesn't show up? Because I haven't included it. I have to include it, right? So I have to go in here and say include GameObject.h. There we go. GameObject.h. Now you can see GameObject. Is this good? Or am I missing something? What am I missing for me to inherit from GameObject? No. Public. Unless you add the class. If you add a class, it does it for you. But if not, you should put public in here, right? If you don't put public in here, then you won't be able to access the target class at all outside of this class. It's kind of a weird thing. I understand why C++ does it, but that's kind of a weird thing to do. Two things also, I need a public area and I need a private area, right? Almost like a little, a category, if you will. Some people have called it a division access area, definitions, whatever, right? Basically what these are is these two areas. Anything under the public is public accessible. Anything under the private is privately accessible only by the class, right? So what I want to do now is I could certainly type my virtual functions. Are you with me? And if you remember that in my GameObject.h, let's take a look at my GameObject.h here. In my GameObject.h, I added a couple things. One is I have this enumeration, my GameObject.h file. I have this enumeration that specified different things, right? One of the things that is new is something called target. So I'm going to add that in. So target. And all this is just another enumeration type. So notice if I hover over island, it's 0. If I go to target, it becomes 7. It's just a way of identifying which object it is. That's all I'm using it for. Okay, it's very simple. Scroll down and you can see that I have 3 functions that are virtual abstract functions. These things right here. Okay? Whenever you see this structure virtual, the function name n equals to 0, they're abstract functions that must be overridden for the thing that inherits from GameObject, right? So if I look to my target.h, I am inheriting from GameObject, right? I'm inheriting from GameObject, but I don't have those functions. I need those functions. So what I'm going to do is kind of click down in here, and I'm going to go to the GameObject class, right-click. I'm going to go to Quick Actions and Refactorings, and it's going to say, Implement Pure Virtuals for Base GameObject. Are you with me? So when I do that, it does this. It installs all those virtual functions, right? It does all that stuff. I can save this, yay. However, be warned, they put it in the wrong spot. They put it in the private area, and it should be in the public area. So let's move them up. Actually, just move that private down. So we're going to cut this and move it down in here, right? So now you can see that they're in the right spot, right? They're just definitions for a draw, update, and clean set of functions that all game objects have. That's why we defined it in the GameObject superclass. Okay, fantastic. We've done our job here, and we've also created some stuff automatically, or I should say automagically, inside the CPP file. However, there's some stuff we're missing. One of the things we're missing is the constructor function. So you should put that in here, target. And we also should note the destructor. They're not terribly urgent to put in, but I like to put them in. I think it's good to have them. And notice there's these little squiggly green lines. That means that they haven't been defined. So I'm going to, again, if I hover over, I can see that there's this little light bulb. I can go create definition target in target CPP. I can do that. That'll do it for me. And I can do the same thing here, or I can hover on this light bulb. This is different than the other one. If I right click, I get this. If I click on it, left click, I get this. And if I hover on this one, I can see that I can also create declaration definition. One of the two is fine. It'll do the same thing automatically for me. I like this. I talked about this last week. I like this because it reduces my finger typing problems. If I mistype something or whatever, I don't have to worry about it. It just does it for me. And it just sets up a stub where I can implement some code very quickly. All right, so I have two things, target, constructor, and the destructor, right? They're empty. All of these are empty. And notice also, if I was to look at my island class, you can see that I also have these other functions, move, check bounds, and reset. Guess what? I don't need them. Because my target for today is not going to move. It's just going to like literally be static on the screen. So I don't need a move function. It's not going to check to see if it's moving beyond any bounds, so I don't need the check bounds function. And I'm never going to reset the target, so I don't need the reset function. So I don't need these things. All right, cool. So one of the things that I have to look at, though, in my target.cpp, right, is in my constructor, I'm going to call upon the game instance. And if you look at island.h as a code example, so here's island.h, and if I go to my island constructor, if I go to definition there, so I'll pull up the island.cpp file, you can see what it's doing. It's going into, it's actually accessing texture manager, and I also am going to eventually access the game, right? So in my target.h, I need to include a reference to texture manager because I want my target to be renderable. If I want it to be renderable, I need to have a texture that's associated with it, right? Texture being an image, right? I remember what I'm using texture manager for. Texture manager is literally a container. It's a container for my texture. So I have a texture map, and when I add a texture to the texture map, right, I can access it from any place in my code. I need a reference to it here. So I got to say that, okay, I want to include a reference to texture manager.h here, right? That's what this does. Yay, right? And also notice that in my island.cpp, I included my game.h here, but not in my island.h. Why? Because my game.h includes island.h. And if my island.h includes game.h, we have a cyclical reference, which is not good. So we're only going to include it, the game.h we're only going to include it in the CPP file. So in the target.cpp, we're going to include a reference to game.h, which we need. Okay? Pretty simple stuff so far. Okay, so we have some example code of what we need to do to render our target. However, before we get there, we don't have an asset for the circle. I want a circle to be printed on the screen. We don't have an asset. However, I provided one for you up online. If you go to Blackboard, and if you look at week 2, I know it's not super exciting, but if you look at week 2, and one day, yeah, and under week 2, all the way down, there's an assets folder. If you look at assets, there literally is a circle asset, which is this circle.png. Download it. This way you don't have to make it. All right, I made it today. It's not exciting. It's just blue, right? It's a primitive. That's all it is, right? Okay, so you download it. When you download it, make sure you put it in the right spot. It has to be put inside of your assets textures, right? So it has to go inside of assets, inside of textures, and it's got to go in here, right? Notice I don't have it in here. However, I have a copy of it in my file. So if I go into here, do I have it here? No, maybe it's the other one. Sorry, I have too many of these up. And they're the same one. I meant it's going to go to, hold on a second. It's going to go to This one, there's a circle. I'm going to copy this one here, and just kind of like what you're doing, but a little bit different because I already have it. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go into my other one, which is this one, and paste it. There we go. All right, so it's there. I need to have this in there, or else I can't. I don't have a texture to draw, right? So it's called circle with a capital C. You can change it to a lowercase c or something else if you want. It's up to you. All right, so yeah, I have it. Now I can do what the island CPP example shows me, which is I can go to my texture manager, I can get an instance of the load function and load up this stuff. So I want to copy everything in my island constructor except for the sound. I don't care about sound right now. So I'm going to grab all this stuff in my island constructor, copy it. I'm going to go back to my target CPP inside my target constructor and paste it. All right, let's talk about what this does. So again, texture manager, I get a reference to the instance. I'm going to load, I'm going to call the function, load function, and I'm going to go to assets, textures, and it's going to be circle. Here it is. Circle.png. I'm not going to, this is the friendly name that I'm giving my texture. Island doesn't make any sense. It's going to be circle. You could also call it target. And I'm also going to get, I'm going to meter how big this thing is. I'm going to measure it. So the size is, I'm going to get the texture size from the instance. So of circle, right? By the way, the circle is 40 by 40, and the actual object inside is 38 by 38, something like that. Okay? My reset function I can get rid of because we're not going to reset anything, so we can get rid of this. Also, my set type, it cannot be island because I already have an island. It should be the thing I already defined, which is target. Okay? So this is where I've set up all my initializations for this thing, the target. One thing to note is that my velocity from my island was 0.5, which means it would move down the screen 5 pixels per frame. We're going to make my target's velocity 0. So starting off. That's on line 12. So this is what you should have in the target constructor now. Are you with me? Anyone not with me and needs more time? So let's explain some of this stuff. I don't really care if it's colliding yet, but I might. I'm probably not going to move it, but I might. So I'll leave this there. I am getting a reference to the size of the circle. I don't know how big it is. Sometimes I want to add an asset into my game. It's really cool, but I don't know exactly the size. So what I've set up, I've created this get texture size function that determines the size of the circle by looking at the texture and measuring it. That's all it does. Yes? What? This? No, because I mentioned it here. This is the friendly name for the circle. Remember, I'm creating a map file, a texture map, and I'm creating the friendly name that I want to store. I'm going to say circle is referring to this texture, circle.png. Right, that's what it is. So every time I say, hey, get the texture, get this texture, I mean this, right? Are we good now? We're needing more time. You're good? All right. Next, we leave the target destructor alone. We go into the draw function. Hey, curious, do I need anything in the update? No. Do I need anything to clean? No, not right now. Only draw right now is what we have to do. And if you look at the island CPP as an example, there is a draw function we can copy. We copy this whole thing. And we're going to go back to the target.cpp and paste it inside there. We'll explain what that does. It says, hey, set my X and Y position to whatever it is. However, I want to get the texture manager and the instance of it and call the draw function of the texture manager and look at the target, not the island, target texture, and print it out or blit it to the surface, if you will, at the X and Y locations that I specified up here, all right? And then I want to pass in a reference to the instance, the get renderer, the renderer of my game object, the actual game itself. I want to pass it in here in order for it to show this on the screen. So the reason why I need a reference to the game itself is because of this, right? Because remember I only make one renderer. That renderer is housed in the game. It's a singleton. right? I don't want to have more than one renderer, so I have one instance of the game and one instance of the renderer, and that's why I need to pass this over to this class, and that's the only reason why I'm doing this, right? Yes. Sorry? In the, oh, that's bad. That should be circle. Thank you. I mean, I could have made a target, but circle makes it, because it's a circle, right? All right, so, cool, we're good. Now, we're not done. Far from it. Why? Because all we've done is we've created an object, but we need to install this object inside of our game. And the way to do that is we need to instantiate it, we need to declare it in our .h, right? And we need to update it and draw it. That's what we need to do, right? Also, where is this circle going to appear by default? Top left. We're going to set the location later. I recommend we set it now before the velocity. We can probably do that, so we can say something like set position, right? We have a set position function. We can say that it's a GLM vec2, right? And we want to put it in the top left for now. We'll move it somewhere else later. For now, let's put it top left. So we're explicitly saying it's going to be there. I don't want it to do it by itself, although, by the way, by default, I set it to 0, 0, by default, right? But let's just make sure we do it like this. All right, so I've set position, set velocity, it's set that it's not colliding, set the type that it's target. So we've configured everything in our constructor function. Now, in other code, if I was creating a game engine, I might create another function called initialize or init, something else, that does all this, and the constructor function could reference it. Because sometimes I want to reinitialize everything back to the original stuff. And I can't access the constructor more than once, right? So therefore, it'd be nice if I could have another function I could access if I wanted to restate or change the state of the object back to normal. However, we're not doing that right now. All right, so yeah, that's this. Okay, so we've done this part, and we're moving on. So now we've got the target, but guess what? We need to access the game. So we're going to go back to our game.h. And in our game.h, we have to make a reference to this object we just made, which is the target, so include target.h. We need to include it because we don't have a reference to it. We don't know anything about it. Game doesn't know anything about target, right? Until now. And the next thing that we need to do is down in here, so fine, we make an instance of the game and so on, and then scroll down, we have these public functions, and down in the private area is where we define the game objects. We need to make a new one for the target. So I'm going to go down in here, and I'm going to say something like target, capital T, right? Star, which is pointer, right? And we're going to say that M_P target. And someone asked me earlier, what is the M_P? What is it? Member pointer. A member underscore means private, a private member variable that's a pointer. That's what it is. So when you look at something that's M_, you know it's private. If it's M_P, it's a private pointer variable, member variable. If it's M_S, it's a private static variable, which is like this one, right? Or static underscore, a static pointer. This is a static pointer. We do that sometimes. And this one is M_B. If you really want to specify the type, you can do that here, where B stands for Boolean, if you really want to, okay? But anyways, the idea is that anything M_ is in the private section of your class. Great. So now what I want to do is I want to create my game objects again. So I'm going to go there. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to definition, which is on line 23 of my game.cpp file. And notice I commented everything out. And now I want to add in my new object, which is my target. So I'm going to go down in here, and I'm going to say that M_P target is equal to a new target. Now, I asked this question earlier. Why do we need to use a new keyword? Yeah, why? Go ahead, you can answer, Alex. I'm allocating memory where? On the heap or on the stack? Heap. And the reason why we're using the new keyword is because we're allocating memory for a pointer, right? So it's going to create a new, now, and otherwise I wouldn't have to use the new keyword at all. I can just use target, right? Capital T target, and then it would create a new instance of the target, but it wouldn't make a pointer to it. You have to make a pointer to the target. You can do this in one line. So this is, that's the first step. Step 2. So number 1, actually this is step 2. Step 1, declare it in the .h. Step 2, instantiate it inside somewhere. I'm just doing it in the create objects function. Step 3, I need to draw it. So I'm going to go down into the render function, which is around line 94. And before the SDL render present, just before this bottom bookend, I call these the bookends for rendering, right? The render clear, and then it render presents. I need to draw it to the surface. So I'm going to do the m_p target. I'm going to call the draw function, and I'm going to use the arrow to reference it because it's a pointer type, and I'm dereferencing the draw function from the pointer, right? I need to use the arrow, not the dot. Yes.
You could use the dot automatically.
Oh yeah, but it'll still change it. So it's not, there's no point. The point is it's not right, right? Luckily Visual Studio does that for you. It didn't used to. Right? So, all right, cool. So we're good. We've got the draw function. One more thing we have to do is call the update function. So scroll down, and now underneath everything else we can update it. Now you're going to say, wait, Tom, why are we updating something that has no update? Because really we haven't done anything in the update function. m_p target, and then update. Well, we know right now we don't have anything, but later on we will. So I don't want to remember this. I don't want to remember that I need the update function, so I'm going to put it in now. Right now it points to an update function that doesn't do anything. Okay? All right, so if we did everything correctly, this should be enough to render my object in the middle of my screen, somewhere. Or sorry, the top left corner of my screen. Let's try this out. And if everything works, a blue dot should appear in the top left corner of your screen. All right? Let's take a look. Yay, you can hardly see it. It's up here. But that's no good. I want it to go somewhere down here. So let's put it something like in my target.cpp, in my target constructor function, let's set the position to something else. I want to go across by about 100 and down by about 100. Okay, and save. And now when I run it, so all I've done is change line 12 in the target constructor to 100, 100, and I'm pressing play, and let's see what happens when it builds. Now you can see the dot. That's clearly our target now. Yes? 100, 100? Yeah. Low. Yeah, so basically what my function allows it to do, GLM, let me go back. That's interesting you asked. But basically what the GLM function is an overloaded template function that takes either integers or floats, right? I think other types as well. But it's a good habit because our position, right? I mean, it is an integer. I mean, you can kind of not really have a quarter pixel or something, right? However, it may happen, right? That when your calculations happen, that you have a quarter pixel as you're calculating, it'll keep track, although it'll round up to the nearest integer, whole pixel number, right? So I'm using a floating point number here. You could use an integer, it'd be the same, right? So I'm moving it over to 100, 100, and F specifies it's a floating point number. That's all it is, and it'll take it. All right, your challenge. This is the challenge that you're going to make. You have, if you downloaded everything from last week, you have a ship, right? Or if you worked, you might have some other object that you made last week, or whatever. What I want you to do is I want you to put the other object to the right of the target. So it's going to instantiate in there. You could use, if you really want to, the ship that I have up on GitHub. You could use the island. You could use the cloud. I don't recommend using the ocean, though. The ocean would just be too bloody massive. It would be massive like this. I don't know what you would do with the ocean. But don't use the ocean, but if you use the island, if you use the island or the cloud, I don't recommend the cloud, or the ship that comes with my stuff on GitHub, And all I wanted to do is move that other object, instantiate that object to the right, somewhere around 500 on the x-axis, right? On the same level on the y-axis, let's say 100, move it across, and when it meets the target, stop. All I want you to do. Now, in order for you to do this, you need to modify the ship, if you're going to use the ship, or modify the island, or modify whatever to make it work. That is your lab for today. Literally, that's all I want you to do. So, it requires a couple things. You need to do that. You also need to know where to stop. How do I find out where the target is? Who knows about the target right now? The game, right? The game is the only place that knows about the target, and it's a private variable. It's m_p target. You need somehow to expose this information in order for you to tell whatever the other object is where to stop. Okay? There's different ways of doing that. I'm gonna leave it to you. That's the challenge. And when we come back, I will record the answer, the solution for you. All right? Remember that your lab today is about participation. It's about understanding. It's not, I don't care, if I give you the solution and you do what I did. If you do it and you hand it in, you're going to get 100%. Okay? I don't care. That's what it's going to be like. I'm going to stop recording now. And you should be able to do this challenge on your own.